Und
Hi,
hello,
Jamie.
hello, and hello everybody that's joining us today.
Welcome, everyone, to our webinar on Australian migration. We are really happy that you've joined us, and there's quite a few that have joined us. For anyone who's listening to this on a recording, obviously we have recorded this and we've emailed this to everyone who has registered for the webinar. So thank you to everyone for your registrations. Today's agenda, I'm just going to quickly put this slide up so you know what we're going to be talking about. I hope that what we talk about is relevant to you and what your plans are. If it's not relevant to you, then the likelihood is that in the future we'll run a webinar which is likely to you and likely to any visa subclass that you're looking to apply for. Regardless, if today's not relevant to you, then feel free to get in touch and talk about any other visa subclass that's not discussed on today's agenda. Firstly, an introduction. Who are we? So we are Sable International. We started our life in business or as a business called a different brand. We were First Contact, and we started our life in London about 20 odd years ago. Servicing the expat market in London, and we've grown throughout the last 20 years to provide different services. We're a group of companies that provide different services, financial services, foreign exchange services, accounting services, tax services, wealth services, but we also do a lot of immigration services. We're one of the largest UK immigration providers in the world, and we're also a very large Australian migration provider as well. And that's what we'll be talking to you about today. Sable International has offices around the world. I'm in Melbourne. We have offices in Cape Town, where Jamie is, elsewhere in South Africa and the UK also. My name's Sam, Sam Hopwood. I've been with the business for 17 years now. I'm the Managing Director of First Contact Australia and of Sable International Australia. I'm a registered migration agent. I've been practicing Australian migration law for the past 15 odd years. Started my career in London, and now I'm based here in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. And I'll be leading the webinar today, but I've also got my esteemed colleague with me, Jamie. If you'd perhaps like to introduce
Yes, of
yourself.
course. So, hi, everybody. I'm Jamie. So, I'm a migration consultant and caseworker within our Australian migration team here in Cape Town. Work very closely with Sam, and I've been with the business now for almost 4 years. So, it's a very exciting space to work within. I'd be your first point of contact. So, for anybody that was calling us up to our Cape Town office, you'd speak with me, and I can assist with all the visas that we're going to be discussing today. So, please feel free to give a call, pop an email at the end of this. More than happy to hear from you and help.
Excellent. Thanks, Jamie. Oh, so Jamie maybe put this slide in here, why Australia? Because she's like, well, you should explain how good Australia is. I'm like, everyone knows, don't they? And I can hear everyone in the webinar going, oh, that typical Aussie, so arrogant. That's not entirely true, but it does come with the territory. So why Australia? There's a few points here on this slide that I've put together for you, which describes reasons why people might choose to migrate to Australia. Australia ranks very high on different livability concepts, and there's certain rankings that certain websites around the world rank different countries on, and on these concepts like job security, health and happiness and prosperity, safety. Australia always rates very highly. But more than that, I think why Australia, from a South African's point of view, is because as a culture, as a people, we're very similar to South Africans. We speak the same language, which helps when you're migrating to another country. I understand you speak more languages than just English. There's a lot of languages in your culture, but predominantly, English language is it's what's spoken in your country and ours, and that makes migrating easy. But more than just the English language, it's what we do. We play cricket, you play cricket, we play rugby, you play rugby better than us. We have barbecues and you have braais. What we do is very similar. I've been traveling to South Africa for over 15 years now. And when I ask people why they've chosen Australia to migrate to, it's often those reasons. We all enjoy outdoors, and similarities are many. So I think that's why people choose Australia over other destinations.
Absolutely.
Was that good enough, Jamie? Was
No,
that
you
why
covered it
Australia?
definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
we all love South
Okay.
Africa, but it obviously has its drawbacks. So the livability factors that I mentioned there, yeah,
Cool.
absolutely.
All right. So how do we get there? What's the right visa for me? This space is confusing to people when they first come to it, which visa for me, because there's so many to choose from. Independent school visas, state nominated visas, regional visas, employer nominated visas, business and visas, investor visas, student visas, partner visas, parent visas, visitor visas, the list goes on. I think at last count, there was like 102 different visas in the list to choose from. And I think when you go onto Department of Home Affairs website and you look at working visas, there's like 20 different working visas that you could choose from. So hopefully today we're going to give you just a couple of visas to concentrate on, what are popular visas for many South Africans, have been through the course of time and will be into the future. And we'll explain to you why they are popular and important concepts within those visas that you need to concentrate on. What I should say also is that we're happy to field questions throughout the webinar. So there is a chat box. Only we can see the questions that you enter. So they are anonymous. We won't mention your name or anything like that. So your boss won't know that you're attending a webinar today. If you're at work, I'm sure none of you are doing that. So feel free to put a message in the chat box. In fact, can someone type something in the chat box? Let me know where you are. Where are you in South Africa or elsewhere around the world? Can you tell me what city you're in or what province you're in? Say hello. Put any comments you like in the chat box. We will. Oh, someone's from Cape Town. Hello, someone from Cape Town. Durban, Cape Town, Knysna, Midrand.
Cape Town, a lot of Cape
Another one
Towns.
from Cape Town. A lot of
Some
Cape
Joburg.
Townians. Joburg, Durban.
Ah, there we go. Gauteng, Durban, Cape Town again.
Yes. Like I say, I travel to South Africa a lot, and I must say, Cape Town is kind of like a favorite. Obviously, our office is there, but it's a beautiful city. A lot of similarities between Cape Town and other parts of the world, especially here in Australia. Sydney and Cape Town, very similar. Thanks for interacting, everyone. It's really nice to have a little bit of interaction in the webinar. Like I said, if you have a question, obviously we can't do detailed questions about your specific individual events, but if you have a generic question that might be applicable to all, then we're happy to answer questions. We'll probably have a little bit of a Q&A at the end also. So let's try and do this as a little bit of an interactive exercise. So today, what am I really going to concentrate on? I'm going to concentrate on general skill migration, or what we in the industry refer to as GSM. So general skill migration is the way in which the majority of people who have migrated from South Africa to Australia did it. They did it through a skilled visa, and they probably did it through one of these three visas that I've got on the board here for you today. So we're going to talk about 189 skilled independent. We're going to talk about 190 state nominated, and we'll talk about regional nominated visas. These all fall within the general skill migration category, and there's common aspects to these visas. And there's also a lot of differences as well, but there's commonality, and I've just put some dot points on the board there, which are the common aspects. So in order to qualify for any one of these three visas, you need to be under the age of 45. You need to work in an occupation, which is a skilled occupation. That skilled occupation needs to be on a particular list. You need to have your skills assessed, which means that you need to have a positive skills assessment in that occupation. Your English language needs to be tested. You need to pass health and character requirements. And these are all points tested visas. So you're only going to get invited to apply for one of these visas if you score sufficient points. So these are all common aspects to these particular general skilled visas. It's important to note that you can't just go and apply for one of these visas. You need to be invited to apply. So All these visas require that you complete what's referred to as an expression of interest. It's kind of like throwing your hat in the ring, as they say. Basically, an expression of interest or an EOI is you putting your information into a very large database, and every month the Department of Home Affairs decides who they're going to invite from that database. They kind of cherry pick the best of the best in certain occupations with certain points in order to migrate. I can see there's some questions in the chat box. Someone's raised the question, if I'm over 50, look, if you're over 50, not everything is lost. There are still possibilities depending on you and depending on your skills. There are pathways to permanent residency for people who are over 50. I'm not going to go into them today, but it's worthwhile having a conversation with Jamie or her colleagues in our Cape Town office, and they can explain to you what options might still be available to you.
Our contact details will be at the end of the webinar, so please just get in touch, give us a call.
Yeah, I can see there's a question about a parent visa. Again, I'm not going to do parent visas today, but we process a lot of parent visas. Get in touch with Jamie. Jamie will talk you through all the parent visas. Someone's asked what's the turnaround time on getting a 189 visa. It's a tough question to answer. I will touch on that just now, but it's not something that I can answer with any clarity, because there's a lot of different components that go into that.
Couple questions.
Someone's asked for a list of the required skills. I'll put a link in the chat box for everyone when we're finished, so that, or Jamie will do that for you now, even to the skilled list, so everyone's got that. Someone's asked if doctors are on the list. They sure are. Doctors are high on the list. So skilled independent subclass 189. Let's talk about this visa. Now, the first thing that you need to know when you're talking about visas for Australia, and this is all visas for Australia, that we talk in subclasses. So every visa has its subclass, and its subclass is determined or defined by a numerical number. Okay, so 189 is what we refer to as a skilled independent visa. So get used to talking about the subclasses and using the 189s and the 190s. So skilled independent 189, as the name suggests, this visa is independent of any nomination criteria. You are free to live anywhere and work in any profession. This visa was the visa traditionally, going back a few years, that everyone was trying to get, and that a lot of people were successful in getting. I think historically, going back a few years, they used to issue like 40,000 of these a year. And if you scored 65 points and you were an accountant and or another occupation which was on the list, then the chances are you could get a 189. Now, what happened is that the government fell out of love with subclass 189 because it wasn't delivering targeted skills into the areas of Australia that Australia needed. So they reduced the numbers of visas that they were providing, the quotas or the planning levels that they were providing in this particular subclass. You can see on this slide I've provided you the quotas or the planning levels for this year. So the good news is they're going to increase the planning levels from 6,500 last year to 16,652 this year. And just on the planning levels, so really important concept to understand is that our federal government announces and plans for how much skill migration will come into Australia. And at the start of our financial year, which starts in July, they issue quotas to each of the states. Now, we have 7 different states and territories in Australia. And just this week, I'm talking just days ago, the states and territories have been in receipt of their quotas for the next 12 months. So the 16,652 visas in this occupation, or rather in this visa category, has just been announced this week and will be available for the next 12 months until they are basically all taken up. Now, recent examples of successful occupations in this visa include nurses, all types of nurses. There's a worldwide shortage of nurses and everyone's looking for them. General practitioners, childcare managers, early childhood teachers, and university lecturers. So those are some examples. So if you're a nurse on 65 points applying for 189, the chances of you being selected are reasonably good. Whereas if you're an accountant applying for 189 and you've got 100 points, the nurse is going to beat you every day of the week at the moment because that occupation is higher in demand. That's 189. Someone has asked, do you have to stick to the profession that you've applied under within the 189 visa? No, you don't. And that's an important concept. And I think it's part of the reason why the government fell out of love with 189, because you had people who came to Australia under a certain occupation. They were provided a visa based on the fact that they were a nurse. And then when they got here, they decided to go and do something else, which is not nursing related. So that's not delivering the skills that Australia was after. So no, it's a permanent visa, which means that you're a permanent resident and you can do whatever you want as far as work is concerned. Someone's asked a question, if they are over 45, can they still apply? Sorry, not for this visa. No, you can't, but you may have a pathway through a different type of visa. And like I say, get in touch with Jamie. She'll be able to talk you through that. Moving on, state nominated subclass 190. This is my new favorite visa. This is what most people, this is what the majority of people should be aiming for. This is a visa that the government is now in love with, and this is how the government believes they are going to deliver skills to particular parts of Australia which they are in need of. So state nominated 190. So this visa is different to 189 insofar as this visa requires that you are nominated by a state government. Don't be confused about the word nominated. It's not been sponsored. The state government is providing you a nomination, and that nomination means that you will get an invitation to apply for a visa. But that's where the support stops, if you like. They're not going to provide you a job. They're not going to provide you housing. They're not going to, shower you in presents and gold and all that sort of stuff when you arrive. What the state government is responsible for is providing you a nomination. So what the state governments do is they survey their local labour market requirements, and based on those requirements, they then devise their own lists. And if you're on one of their lists and you meet their criteria, then chances are you might be lucky enough to be nominated by that state. In the point in time that you are nominated by the state government, you will then be provided an invitation to apply for subclass 190. You've got 60 days in which to submit your application once you've been nominated, once you've provided that invitation. Once the visa is granted, you're granted a permanent visa. So you're a permanent resident the day that you arrive. So just like the 189 visa, you're a permanent resident. So when you get to Australia on subclass 190 and you're a permanent resident, no, you don't have to work in your profession. You can work in any profession you want. So the state government is taking a chance on you. They're taking a little gamble, I guess, that you will work in your occupation when you get to Australia, based on the fact that we have not enough of you in that particular area. So they're taking a bit of a gamble. Now, in turn, you've got to agree to live and work in that state for at least 2 years. So they're giving you something, they want you to give them something, which is a guarantee that you'll live and work in that state for the next 2 years.
And Sam, a common question that we get is there any one state that's easier to get into? I just want to get to Australia, what state's going to give me that option?
Oh, give me the easy state. I want to get into the easy state. Yeah, let's all go to the easy state. I understand the reason why people ask this question, and I get asked that question as well, because people just want to get into the state. My response to that question is yes, some states are easier than others. And the reason some states are easier than others is because some states are more popular than others. So you've got really popular states, like New South Wales is really popular because you've got Sydney in New South Wales, largest city in Australia. It's the harbour city, you've got the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House. It's really pretty. People want to go live in Sydney. They've got the beaches, Bondi Beach, all the rest of it, right? And it's a big city. There's a lot of, jobs and opportunities. Similarly, here in Melbourne, where I am in Victoria, it's a very popular state. A lot of people want to migrate to Victoria. So those states which are more popular, like New South Wales and Victoria, make it more difficult for you to migrate here because they can be very specific in the type of skills they're looking for, in the type of people they're looking for, and they have a big group of people to choose from. There's more people applying to be nominated by those states, then they have opportunities to provide to those people. So they will cherry pick. Whereas states like Western Australia or South Australia are less popular, and therefore it's easier for people to get into those particular states. As I said earlier, there's 7 different states and territories. They all have their own lists, they all have their own criteria, and we as migration agents are here to hopefully provide you a service which finds out which states you might qualify for, and where the opportunities lie for you. I'll give you an example of how people who sometimes tackle this themselves bring themselves undone, and that is when they apply to be nominated by a state government. The question there, the application form asks you which states would you like to be considered by, and then you can tick all states. New South Wales will not nominate you, even if you're a nurse, right? And they need nurses. But if you're a nurse who has ticked all states in your nomination form, they're not going to nominate you, because New South Wales wants you to have only specified that you wish to migrate to New South Wales. They want to feel special. They want you to make them feel special, that you only want to migrate to New South Wales because you've researched New South Wales and there's a reason why you want to go there. So sorry, Jamie, I'm babbling on your question, which was, is there an easy state? Well, no, there's not an easy state. None of us are easy, but there's easier states. So, but from my point of view, I'm not going to put you into the easiest state. I'm going to put you into the state which you've got best chance of success. And what we're going to do for you is make sure that when we present your application to one of the state governments, they will look upon you as favourably as possible. Alrighty, and the great news about this is the quotas have been increased from 11,200 places last year to 20,000 places this year. So starting from today, basically, there's 20,000 spots up for grabs through state-nominated 190 visas. Alrighty, regional state-nominated 491. Now, when I say regional, in your mind, you're all thinking the Great Sandy Desert, you're thinking the outback, you're thinking
massive creepy
bugs
crawlies
and spiders, creepy
things we don't
crawlies,
have here.
snakes, and things. You've got
It's
plenty
not
of those
spiders that
things.
big.
So please don't think, when you think regional, please don't think the outback. Yes, the outback is considered regional, of course it is, but there's a lot of very beautiful towns and cities in regional areas. If you know where the Gold Coast is, if you know where the Sunshine Coast is, these are considered to be regional areas. These are regional areas which are an hour's drive from major metropolitan city Brisbane. So there's lots of beautiful regional areas. I grew up in a regional area. My mum and dad lives in a regional area. It's a town of 40,000 people with, a beautiful place to go to school and to grow up, and a lot of people would be very happy there. So that's the first thing I say about the regions. Don't be put off by the word region. Someone's asked, Townsville in Queensland, would that be regional? Absolutely. Townsville is considered a regional area. I've just come back from holidays from Queensland, not too far away from Townsville. And yes, it's a regional area. And what a lifestyle, Queensland. It's sunny all the time. It's winter here in Australia right now, in Melbourne. It's dark, grey, clouds, cold. I've just been to sunny Queensland where it's like 22 degrees in wintertime. It's beautiful. It's like Durban, basically. All right, less babbling, more talking about subclass 491. So this is also a state-nominated visa, similar to subclass 190. The main difference is that this is a temporary visa. So you do not enter Australia as a permanent resident. You do come in as a temporary visa holder, but it has a defined pathway from temporary to permanent. So what they've done, the state governments, is they have built even more precise skills lists based on local, regional labour market shortages. And if you're on one of their lists in one of their regions, then chances are you might get nominated by one of the state governments for subclass 491. So you'll get a visa which is valid for 5 years. You need to come to Australia. You need to live and work in that regional area before you can then apply to become a permanent resident of Australia. The good news is they've increased the quota for subclass 491 from 11,200 places last year to 25,000 places this year. So this gives you an idea, this gives you an indication of how important the Australian government believes populating the regions even further and sending more skilled applicants to the regions is. What you'll find with regional migration is that there will be occupations on the regional lists which you will not find on the 190 and 189 lists. For example, you'll find cafe and restaurant manager on a 491 list. You won't find that on a 190 list, guaranteed. You'll find graphic designer on a 491 list. You won't find that on a 190 list. So if you're a skilled person but you're not on a 189 list, because that's like the creme de la creme of all the lists, then you need to go looking on the 190 lists and then on the 491 lists. Someone's got a good question here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep,
So
Jamie,
there's a good
can you give me
question
that one?
from a gentleman asking if any family living in Australia are of any benefit. So 491 does have an interesting stream where family can potentially be of benefit. So Sam, you can touch on that.
Yes, that's right. So 491 does have a family-sponsored stream as well. It doesn't attract as large a quota, but there is a possibility that if you have family living in a specified region in Australia, then they can sponsor you. You do have to be working in a certain occupation. It is a little bit harder than being nominated. Well, usually it's a little bit harder than being nominated by a state government for the other 491 pathway, but it is something that you should look at closely to see if you have eligibility based on family who could nominate you, or could actually, they use the term sponsor when your family's sponsoring you.
Another question on
there's another
benefits
question
versus on temporary and permanent, but interestingly enough, the 491 actually you have access to public healthcare, which I know is a massive positive for a lot of South Africans looking to relocate, because healthcare, private healthcare in particular in Australia, can be incredibly expensive.
It's true. It's true. So under subclass 189 and 190, you enter Australia as a permanent resident. And as a permanent resident of Australia, you have access to our Medicare system, right? So all permanent visas in Australia have access to our Medicare system. So fall over in the street, break your leg, go to hospital, get seen to, no cost, right? Most temporary visas don't have access to Medicare. However, they changed the rules on the regional state nominated visas a little while ago. What was it, Jamie? Like 18 months, 2 years, 3 years?
Probably 18 months,
it was a little while ago. I forget exactly when, because they didn't used to have medical provisions built into them. But now, when you come to Australia on a 491, whilst you are a temporary resident, you do have full access to our Medicare system, which is of real benefit. And as a skilled migrant coming to Australia, you should have those rights and you should have access to those types of things, because you bring a lot to Australia, and the Australian government should give you a little bit back also.
We've also got another good question here as well, is if you apply for your visa and everything all goes through smoothly and your visa is approved, do you have to hop on a plane in the next week, or do you have some time? Because it's not always easy to wrap up this side.
No, that's right. That's right. So the 3 visas we've spoken about today are all granted for 5 years. When you're granted your visa, you will be granted a visa with what's referred to as an initial entry date, which means that you and your family need to come to Australia within that initial entry date. That initial entry date is usually based roughly 12 months from the date of grant, which means that you need to get to Australia within 12 months. It's actually based off when your medicals and your police clearances were issued. So some clients come to us and go, oh, I'm ready to apply, and here's my police certificate. And we say, well, put that in the bin, because you're not going to need that at least for another 12 months or so. So don't do your police checks early. They'll be of no use to you. It's a waste of time and money. Wait until your visa is ready to be granted before you do those documents. Otherwise, as I say, they're time specific. They're only valid for 12 months. So to go back to the question, yes, you do need to come to Australia to activate your visa within the initial entry date, which is usually within about 12 months of the grant date. But then you can go back to South Africa and, sell your house, resign from your job, sell whatever thing you need to sell, and then pack everything up and ship it back. And then you've got that full 5-year visa to use you need to get back here within that period of
I
time.
think also a lot of South Africans, I mean, just touching on the 491 visa, they hear temporary and it's concerning. Why would I pack up my life and move for a temporary visa if I don't know for sure I'll get permanent residency? So one of the questions that has come through is, can we guarantee that I will get my permanent residency? What does that look like?
Yeah. So yes, you can be very well assured that you will get permanent residency in Australia as long as you come to Australia and you live and you work here in a regional area whilst holding the 491 visa. You can then apply for the permanent visa, which is subclass 887. So yes, there is a defined pathway to permanent residency for those people who enter on 491. So basically, they've structured this visa so that they make sure that you'll go and live and work in a regional area for a lengthy period of time. So the government is hoping that you'll ingrain yourself in that community. Your kids will go to school there, you'll get a job there, you'll buy a house there, and over a period of time, you'll love the area and you won't want to leave. That's what they're gambling on. That's why they're trying to send you to the regions. What they don't want you to do is then to get your permanent residency, sell up, and then move to Sydney, because there's too many people in Sydney already. They want you to stay in that regional area. So that's the way the visa is designed. Put you in the regional area for a period of time, ingrain you in the community, and then once you get your permanent residency, they're hoping that you've built a lifestyle there, you've built friends and family there, and you don't want to leave. But yes, to answer your question, there is a high degree of certainty that you will become a permanent resident if entering on 491.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam.
No problem. Alrighty, there's one other question there regarding British citizenship. And if you're a British citizen, does that bring you any benefit in any way of being granted a visa? Well, look, depending on what you're applying for. So for those people who hold a British passport, if you're applying for a working holiday visa, which is for those people under the age of 31, then yes, it brings you a lot of benefit because South Africans don't qualify for a working holiday visa, whereas British citizens do. So it depends which visa you're talking about as to whether or not British citizenship will bring you any benefit. For subclass 491, it won't bring you much benefit at all. It means that you've got competent English, but you're probably going to have to do an English language exam anyway in order to raise your points to what they need to be to get an invitation. So I'm going to say, no, not really. British citizenship doesn't really help you in this process.
And then another question in relation to accountants. I actually get this question quite a lot as well. I know there's a lot of accountants out there that want to go to Australia, considering skilled visas.
Yep. Yeah, so do accountants have a better chance of going via 491 rather than 189 and 190, where we effectively have no chance at the moment? Yes, well, agreed, under 189, you effectively have no chance at the moment. Under 190, it's yet to be seen because the lists are about to be released. So in the coming weeks and days and weeks, we're going to see all the lists revealed. So all the state governments at the moment are quickly sort of building their lists and building their processes. And they've sent email notifications today and yesterday to say, it's coming, just hang on, we're about to release it. So in the coming days and weeks, we're going to see everyone's lists, and it will be interesting to see if any of the lists do include accountants. It's my bet that if accountants are on the list, there'll probably be caveats around accountants, and that will be that you can get a 190 nomination from a state government as an accountant if you have a job offer in Australia as an accountant. So they're probably going to wrap an additional part of criteria around that nomination, which is typically what state governments do when they're trying to perhaps restrict a certain occupation. That's a good question. Do spouses get the same work rights as primary applicants? Yes. So all family members included in the visa application get the same entitlements. They get the same visa. They get the same conditions. So on the visas we've spoken about today, yeah, spouses get the same as main applicants. Absolutely. Costs. Someone's raised the question of costs. Yeah, it's an important concept to talk about. It's difficult to give you a cost based on there's so many variables built into an application. If you're a single applicant, if you're an applicant with a family of 4, what your occupation is, which state government you might be nominated by. So there's a lot of variables to build into an answer of that particular question. I'll give you ballpark figures. Look, you're probably starting at about, at cheapest, maybe 15,000 Australian dollars, all said and done. If you're a single person to migrate, after you've paid for, visas and flights and, a few other bits and bobs, you might get out of it with 15,000 Australian dollars. If you're a family of 4, look, you probably might end up spending somewhere in the order of 50,000 Australian dollars once you've, shipped your goods and flown over and paid for the visa fees, etc. You can get quite granular with fees once we assess you as an applicant. We can give you quite detailed information on costs.
Then we've got another question about if you were to obtain a job offer from an employer on a visa, can they restrict it to only you and not your spouse and family? So we're not touching on employer-sponsored visas today. If that's a situation that you are currently in, more than welcome to please get in touch with us after the webinar, and we can advise on that. Absolutely.
Yeah, look, where Jamie and her colleagues in Cape Town are happy to field questions on any different subclasses. I'm happy to touch on that particular question. And the question is, if you get a job offer from an employer on a visa, can they restrict it to you only and not your spouse/family? The simple answer is yes. So the employer decides who they wish to include in the application, because the employer is typically sponsoring everyone in the application. However, typically from my point of view and the employers that I've dealt with over the course of time, they're very unlikely to restrict an offer of employment to just the main applicant, because who's going to leave home without their spouse and children?
Sometimes
So
I wouldn't
more often
mind.
than not, everyone's included.
Sometimes
What's that, Jamie?
I think I wouldn't mind, hey? Leave him behind, hop on a
Maybe
plane.
leave your
Peace and
spouse
quiet,
at home.
please.
I hope Kurs is
Oh
not
gosh.
watching this. Okay. What's the best pathway for general practitioners? Look, subclass 189 is probably a good pathway for you, but even better than that, employer-sponsored pathways for general practitioners, in my experience, have been probably the easiest and quickest ways to get into Australia. We recently helped a client migrate from the United Kingdom to Tasmania. The employer sorted out the nomination for them, and we sorted out the visa for them. That was a general practitioner. Yes,
Yep,
Jamie, it was, wasn't it? Yep. So we find that general practitioners are often offered employer-sponsored visas, which get processed rapidly. And then once they're onshore, they often have further opportunities and different visa types. Someone's asking a question about barristers and certified financial planners, and if they are likely to be on the new lists. Definitely legal advocates, who we refer to as solicitors here in Australia, are likely to be on the lists. The problem with that occupation is the skills assessment requires that you come to Australia and study law here in Australia in order to obtain a positive skills assessment, which is basically being admitted to the board to practice here in Australia. So it's possible, but it's difficult because of the skills assessment requirement. Most clients I've seen been successful in that particular occupation have come to Australia and studied at a university doing a master's degree in law, and have then found a pathway thereafter. HR managers, advisors, likely to be on the list. Oh, it's a tough one. They might be on a 491 list in a regional area somewhere. Generally speaking, HR is a popular occupation, and we generally have enough of them. You might be better off to try and find an employer sponsor. I'm conscious of time, and we did want to try and wrap this up in 40 minutes, and that's roughly what we're running to now. Someone's just asked if they can find the regional town list. There's not one regional town list. There's 7 states and territories, and within each of those states and territories there might be 4 or more different regions, which means 4 or more different lists, which means that we could be looking at about 28 different lists for the regions only. So what I'd suggest you do if you want to be assessed, and this moves me on to my next slide, where to from here. This is an auto signature of a client who I'm dealing with at the moment, and I thought I'd include this in the slides in the presentation because it's I had a little chuckle to myself. This client got in touch with me about 4 years ago to ask me if they had an option to migrate to Australia. They did at that point in time. They had a pathway, they had a visa opportunity, and they got in touch with me late last week. And in the auto signature is this particular quotation: "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." Hopefully for that client, they haven't missed their particular opportunity. But if they'd taken their shot 4 years ago, they'd probably be here in Australia now. So my point is, if you're on a list today, there's nothing to say that you're going to be on that list tomorrow or next week or next year. So if you have an opportunity, you might want to consider taking that shot now, because you might not be able to take that shot in the future. So to the person who asked where you can find the regional town list, you can get in touch with the team in Cape Town. These are our contact details. So we have offices in the UK, in South Africa, in Australia. Our email address is there on the slide. There's our different offices around the world. Also, I encourage you to get in touch with one of our offices, and we will be happy to assist you. We'll be happy to assess you. Our job in this process is to manage your application. As registered migration agents, we're here to advise you, to assess you, to find a pathway for you, and then to take you from where to go, to do the skills assessment for you, to do the state nomination for you, to do the visa application for you, and to make sure that that whole application process is successful. So please, we encourage you to get in touch, talk to Jamie, talk to the team in Cape Town, send us an email, and we're happy to be helpful and to provide you an assessment. Jamie, have I missed anything?
No, I think you've covered a lot of it. Worth noting.
I feel like I've been talking non-stop for hours.
No, you definitely touched on all the important points. I think it's also worth mentioning that we are quite brutally honest in our assessments. We have a strict policy of not signing on clients unless we feel that there's a reasonable chance of success. No agent can guarantee that you'll be selected and invited to apply for your skilled visa. It is a competitive process. So, it's our practice that we don't take you on unless we think that there's a likely shot that you would be selected.
Yeah, we're happy to assess you, but don't be disappointed if we say no, because we don't want to give you false hope. We don't want to take money off you if we don't believe that you're going to be successful in this process. Be careful who you do give your money to. Unfortunately, there are some people out there who will tell you what you want to hear and take your money. So
horror stories out there, absolutely.
Buyer beware. But get in touch with Jamie. She's brutally honest.
And I'm fair. I'm South African. I know I don't have, boatloads of money floating around to waste on a process that's not going to, end up getting me where I want to go. So no, I understand.
We don't want to waste your time or your money. All right, that's been fun. We're going to do more of this. We're probably going to do this once a month. It's going to be different topics. We're happy to do interaction and answer questions. Spread the word, tell your friends and family. Get in touch. Watch our webinars. It's been enjoyable.
Yeah, no,
thanks, Jamie.
Thank you to everybody that joined today. Really appreciate it. And thanks, Sam.
Yeah. Hope you enjoy your days. All right.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye now.